Well, hi everyone. I haven't done one of these interviews for ages, so it's so nice to be starting off a new season, I guess, with the lovely Kirstin here. Me and Kirstin met on Instagram really, because I think Kirstin, your Kickstarter finished just as mine was starting.
Mm.
So when you ran your Kickstarter for My Brother is a Vampire. So yeah, it's really exciting to be chatting here today. And I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I'm Kirstin McNeil. I'm an indie author. I started my indie author journey last year, and I published My Brother is a Vampire last year in June after meeting my illustrator on Instagram 4 months earlier. And I am currently working on another book called My Family is So Scottish, because you may be able to tell I am Scottish. And that should be coming out in June this year. And I'm really excited about it because I have some really cool surprises ahead.
Gosh, that's really exciting. And I know that when I came across you on Instagram, it was nice to have somebody who was, going through the same experience at the same time. And you had some really great reels of your experience of Kickstarter. So yeah, it was nice having kind of a running mate in a way.
I feel exactly the same about you because you've kind of published independently before. You're a YouTuber, and I was just starting on doing something to do with YouTube. And when I found you, it was perfect because I was like, oh, she's done this before. She's got lots of knowledge. So it's interesting, isn't it, how people are at different stages of publishing, and it's such an amazing community. I really, really love it.
Yeah, I think so too. That was always one of the highlights for me of YouTube as well, was just this sort of author community here. It's really nice and supportive. So with last year being your first book and your first foray into indie publishing, how did you get into writing? Have you written before? What's your kind of background with that?
Yeah, I've always been a writer. I still have my teenage diaries, which cover about 6 years of my teenagedom, which now and again I do dabble into and think, maybe that should be a book. And in there are song lyrics that I've written, and there's a poem to my best friend that broke up with me, and there's loads of I communicate through writing. So I've always written as part of showing my love to other people, showing comedic value to people. When birthday cards from me often have lots of things in them. And since becoming a mother, I started writing or telling stories, I guess, to my children and then writing them down. And I last year I took redundancy from my job, well, actually the year before, and during the pandemic, I took redundancy, and I decided that okay, this might be the time to dabble into actually making a book. And just to be honest, I was very naive, and I didn't really think about independent publishing at all. And I started to submit some of my stories through the traditional publishing route. And then I just thought, okay, I've just got to share stuff and then see what happens. So I started Kirstin Writes on Instagram, I think in the sort of October 2020. And I didn't have anything, it's a very visual platform.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anything visual really. And so one of the sort of my own barriers, I guess, is that I didn't really post much because I didn't feel like I had anything to share. And I think it was actually this time last year, it was the week before Valentine's Day, and I decided that every day I'm going to share a part of one of my poems, and that relate to love. And so I kind of broke through that kind of self-committed barrier, by just going, okay, I'm just going to have fun with this, and I'm going to share parts of each poem that's to do with love, and love will be the theme, and that's an easy one, right? And by doing that, I then got the interest of a couple of illustrators. I was following some hashtags on it, or illustration hashtags on Instagram. And actually, this time last year, the 10th of February, was when I had my first call with Stephen, who illustrated my first book. And that kind of gave me confidence that other people found my stories interesting and found my writing interesting. And also it kind of gave me the confidence to share and to get feedback from people. So I kind of fell into this and I'm still learning. And the way I'm self-publishing my next book is very different to the way that I published my first book. And I think because I'm learning so much, I want to do things in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And I love how social media has led you to, meet the person that you've worked with on the book, but also to have the confidence as well through sort of that. I think it's very easy as a writer to have imposter syndrome, and so to have other people liking your writing is a really nice way to be using social media.
I think it's the engagement really as well. It's the, things can be really great in your head, but actually once you start engaging with people and connecting with your stories, it's so much better.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like going to schools and reading your book and sharing your author story, it's just the most joyful thing to do.
Yeah.
So if anybody's watching this and they want to be an author, do it so that you can go into a school and say, I'm an author, and all the kids are like, they're all like, wow.
It's that moment after you've had, I mean, I don't know about you, but I spend so much time kind of tearing my hair out and wondering about a comma, or is something just right and have I placed it right, and what about this, do the colours look right, and whatever. And then, as you say, you go into a school or, perhaps doing an event and talk to people, and people's response to what you've achieved. It's a nice reality check in a way that, I've actually really, really achieved something, and it's exciting to other people. I think it's easy to forget the excitement yourself sometimes.
It is, because self-publishing is like 90% the other stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's, you kind of have to get excited about the other things as well. And it can get you down, because there's a lot of rejection even in self-publishing, isn't there? There's a lot of self-doubt, and it's really hard. So having a network of people that support you through the way, having different mentors that are at different stages, and then, like you said, having people going, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really great. My boss loves introducing me to clients in my job as, oh, she's an author. She's great.
I think that if you're traditionally published, you have the validation of having got that contract, but when you're doing it yourself, it's, you have to have that confidence, and sometimes you have to draw on sources to remind yourself that you can do this, and your work has value.
I think also it's really fast. It's a really fast learning curve. You might have thought, like me, I wrote my first children's poem. It's called My Daddy's Scared of Beasties, and I wrote it about my husband when I was pregnant, before I even knew I was pregnant. And that was just a short poem, right? And he was always like, you should publish it, you should publish it. And that was like 7 years ago. And so for a lot of self-publishers, they've had their story in their head for so long.
Yeah.
But then actually, so have a lot of traditionally published people. And the traditional publishing journey, once you get like an agent through to getting the book published, can sometimes take 2 years. And so they've had that really long, getting used to it and sort of that process. And there's probably other negatives about, of that as well, because you probably constantly feel like you want to get stuff done quicker. But when you self-publish, there is so much that happens, and it's almost like, how do we slow this down?
And I think as well, a lot that you can have all the planning and all of everything, and then things happen and you've suddenly got to deal with this stuff. Yeah.
What was your biggest thing when you started self-publishing? What was your biggest kind of, oh, this happened, I didn't realize this would happen?
I don't know. I think just for me, a lot of the time it is fretting over tiny details and ending up going around in circles instead of kind of going, look, it's done. And learning to deal with being able to say, that stage is now complete. It's that thing, isn't it, of perfect is never done. And I think learning that about myself has been a learning curve.
I'm laughing because, Emma, you and I should be peer editors, because on my gravestone will be, done is better than perfect.
Right, okay. With perfect compliment.
There's a spelling mistake in 500 of my books, right? And I only realized a week after it was actually printed. But that didn't, that didn't sort of put off Waterstones from stocking it.
It's the best spelling mistake, though. If you're going to have a spelling mistake,
it's the best spelling mistake.
Fun. And when you shared it, I was looking and going, what's the problem as well? I couldn't see it either.
Yeah, there's lots of dyslexic people in the process, the editing process. And that's the thing. It's you do learn so many mistakes, but you don't learn if you don't make mistakes.
Absolutely. And so we've talked a lot about your book. Tell me about the whole story of My Brother is a Vampire.
I had to steal this from my son's bedroom because I don't have one in my office. Like,
my youngest has got it. She loves it. It's so.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you. That's really lovely. So this is My Brother is a Vampire. It's based on my two sons, Hunter and Hero. And I was bathing the kids, as you do, and Hero was just 2, I think, at the time. And he had really sharp teeth coming through. And I was like, wow, they're so sharp. You might be a vampire. And we just kind of sparred with my 6-year-old. I just said, what other things could he be if he's a vampire? And, Hunter said, oh, he really likes being upside down. And at the time, we were trying to get him to sleep more. And he was getting up at night and crying. And, he's really loud and he screams and he only eats tomato sauce on things. And we just came up with this kind of, my brother is a vampire, and he doesn't like the sun. He's always waking up at night annoying everyone. And it kind of just flowed, like just 3 or 4 verses flew out of me. And I grabbed my phone and I was like, before it flies out of my head. And then I sort of went for a walk, and as you do, and tried to make it sense of it, and then left it alone for a bit. Came back to it in January last year and was like, this is quite cool. And then I shared it with a couple of mates, because I think I usually kind of share that stuff and then try and get see if it's any good. And one of my friends said that would make a really good song. So I got my ukulele that I was just learning and I made it into a song and made a chorus for it. So that's My Brother is a Vampire, Help Me Please. And at the time, it was the same words as the chorus. And we filmed it. And me and Hunter was dancing, and we filmed it and sent it to my friend. And she was like, oh, that's quite good.
That's so cute.
So thanks, Sadia. You really helped with that process. And then when I met Stephen, so the book is actually the call and response is really important in the book, because there's 2 perspectives. There's the kid's perspective of, why can't anyone see he's a vampire, because he's flying around the living room. And then the chorus is the parents' perspective, which is, well, he's just messing around with cushions. And so sort of you've got, oh, look, he's biting things. And then he's telling his friends, and his friends are like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I thought that was quite cool because it's written from a child's perspective, and I always quite like hidden meanings and hidden messages, and I quite like a hidden story or a storyline that a parent will pick up on and not a child. So when I initially didn't think it was going to be my first book, I honestly didn't have any preference at all that of which book, and I've got about 10 stories written down that could any of them could have been the first book. And when I spoke to Stephen, I read him, I really liked his illustrations, and I said, let's just have a chat. And I read him 3 stories. And at the time, he'd just done a comic, I think, about a vampire kid. And he was like, I really like this vampire story, but it's too short. So I was like, okay, show me what character you would create, and I will go away and maybe add to it. So made it longer, learned a lot from Stephen because he'd already published a book and he'd gone through a Kickstarter. And so again, just like you, kind of was like, oh, I'm so glad there's somebody that tells me the truth about something and doesn't want money for it or doesn't want, a personal gain for it. They just want to help. And so he came back with these awesome drawings, loads of different options. So my brother was a vampire was born. And I think it's the perfect book to start with because it's about my 2 boys. So it's quite cool.
Well, that was exactly what I was going to say, is not just that it's about your family, but also you've got so many cute little like personal meanings and sort of people and places you go to. The book is a really personal book as well. It's lovely.
Yeah, and I think that's because you're an independent author, you get full reign over what you put in the book. And it was really fun to create. Stephen's a very dynamic illustrator, so often he's a teacher, so we would have calls like this over Zoom, and he would connect to his tablet, and as I was talking to him, he would draw the page out.
That's cool.
And so this was a really, really big collaboration with him. Like it was, I'd not worked with an illustrator before, so I was just like, I'm gonna go with this. This is so cool. Yeah. So I do have like some screenshots of, the page. I think it's the skateboard one. Him drawing it out, and it's super cool to watch. It's really, really super cool. So we would have loads of evenings like that. And my favorite is actually this play park. So the play park has like got a tree house in it and stuff. And I literally did a sort of walk by. So that's the play park there. And I did a walk by video of the play park. And the next week he'd drawn it up and it just looks exactly like it.
Yeah.
And the bandstand as well. When I go into local schools, the kids are like, that's my play park, that's my bandstand. So yeah. they relate to it as well. It's quite iconic for London to have, South London has lots of bandstands. And then I guess you just want a true representation as well. Most of the characters are real people that we know. The only characters actually in this book that are not real are these 2, because they're in one of the books that me and Stephen are producing this year, at the end of this year.
Oh, so
those are characters. So they're like a little Easter egg.
Oh, cool.
And then there's another one. There's loads of Easter eggs in here. There's another one that is, this is a character here from Stephen's first book.
Oh, wow. I love that.
So, when we're big and famous, people will know all this from your YouTube video, Emma.
Blogs about all the Easter eggs in your book.
There are quite a few. Do you have any Easter eggs in your books?
So there's on Milk and Cookies, Rhiannon there's a bookcase and she's put the titles of the books on, which is cute. And the toy that Tilly has is the same as one that my daughter has and absolutely loves.
Oh.
And it's slightly changed because, you know, copyright, but it's sort of recognizable to her that that's her toy. So that's really nice. I was going to have a thing that I was going to have the word limpet in every book because it's in the first two. And then I couldn't work it into Milk and Cookies and just thought, I don't
So, why do limpets feed?
It couldn't be done. So.
Honestly, my kids love your book. They love Milk and Cookies. We're constantly going around like this because of the dolphin fact and also the platypus fact. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love me an animal fact. Oh, it's so lovely. It's such a nice book, and one of the things I like about it too is that it's not super long, because my 4-year-old has to have 4 books a night because she's 4, apparently, and you know, it's just, it is a really nice length. It flows really nicely. It is just a lovely book.
Thank you.
Like it. And so, tell me about your publishing journey, because I feel like you know, you went from writing this story in the January, and then we were running the Kickstarter around the same time, which would have been May.
I did mine in April, I think.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure your book was out before mine. I think
June.
I was, yeah, no, it was September, exactly. I was taking forever on everything. So yeah, I mean, that is so fast, and you achieved such a lot. So tell me about how you published it, and in particular, I'm interested in Kickstarter.
Okay, so it's, yeah, I've got a couple of, I send you some of my Kickstarter based deep YouTube videos that you could maybe link to this. It'll be helpful, because the fun one is the Kickstarter emotional journey, which is 100% true. I only filmed myself because I just thought, I think this will be useful, and I didn't really feel like I was going to post it, and then I just put it together when I'd had a few wines and just went.
The first one I saw of you. That was, and I was like, oh, I like her, and follow.
And then I started to do more like, you know, I will give some information that people will know, and it's not just me jumping around in my kitchen or like looking a bit sad. So yeah, I, again, you know, was really naive about it. And I think that's quite a good way, because I don't think there is one clear way to self-publish. So whatever feels right to you is the right way to self-publish. And Kickstarter, I'd never heard of it really. I knew about it, but I'd never supported a Kickstarter before. I think I've now supported 10. It's a bit addictive, isn't it? And I was really intrigued. And it was Stephen, my illustrator, who said, well, you could do a Kickstarter and raise the funds. Because I think one of the hurdles for being an independent author is, how am I going to fund this? And are people going to buy it? Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing about Kickstarter is that you get the funding and you get the pre-orders. And that's a real boost, because having 500 books being delivered to your door is an amazing feeling. But sending out 250 of them the next day is even better.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, I've sold half my books in a day. Yeah. and also, I think, as a new author on the scene, right, people just want to know who you are. And I think Kickstarter is really hard, but it's a really personal thing to do. And even if you fail at doing a Kickstarter, you learn so much about the process, and you learn so much about how you know, people view your book, that actually it's just worth doing it, giving it a go. So I think I just kind of plunged in there, and my son had a ridiculously long Easter holiday, and I still wasn't working. So I thought, let's do this during the Easter holiday to just get me through the Easter holiday. And so at least we've got something to do every day.
Yeah.
And every day Hunter was like, how many have we got now, Mummy? And, you know, it was really great to have the kids involved as well. He's at that stage where he now knows how you make a book. Yeah, so it kind of you kind of have to, I guess the best thing, one of the great things about Kickstarter is it makes you think about all the things ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So like marketing, distribution, you know, launch things, you kind of have to have a timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of, you know, okay, once I get the funds, then I've got to wait for the funds to come. Then I can pay for the printing. Then it's going to be that. And you kind of go, okay, from this Kickstarter date, if it's successful, I then can plan when I'm actually going to launch this book.
Its strength as in the planning. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a real milestone
Mm-hmm.
that you can hang everything else on.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. I mean, one of the things that I really liked about it is that because it's an all or nothing campaign, once you've made your decision that you have to raise X amount of money, you then have to raise that money. And I feel like if it didn't work that way, if however much you raised, you got that much, it would be easy to get partway through the campaign and kind of go, I'm exhausted, I can't do this. Oh well, oh
Got half
perhaps
of the
I'll
money. Yeah.
find another way of raising the rest of the money. And that's the other thing, of course, that you've calculated that that's the amount of money you need. So if you don't raise enough, then what are you going to do? So I just find that aspect of it really powerful.
It's also really low risk for the people that are supporting you.
Yes.
Because if you don't make the money, they don't lose any money.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one thing that people forget to mention when they're doing Kickstarter campaigns, especially in the UK. People in the UK don't know about Kickstarter. They don't really get it.
No.
People in the US love a Kickstarter. So you have to almost, your Kickstarter launch campaign needs to start a month before at least.
Yeah.
So that people actually know what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, when we discussed it, when I was talking to my husband about, I think this is how I'm going to go about funding the next book, was his perception was that Kickstarter was for an invention rather than it being about funding a creative, so that they have that money to be able to create the project. I think that message isn't necessarily out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that's slowly changing. I love all the books that I've supported in Kickstarter. I genuinely love them. And I also think that you get a lot more diversity in the books, the children's books that you buy from Kickstarter, because a lot of things are niche, I don't know if you approach publishers about Milk and Cookies, but it's quite niche. My family is so Scottish, that's really niche. I had an agent say to me, I love it, it's great, but I can't sell it to a publisher. And I was like, fine, I'll just publish it myself.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a similar story for me with Milk, that it wasn't, sorry, my son's just in the kitchen, if you can hear him, just thought I'd mention it, but yeah, he's bumbling about. That it wasn't commercial enough, but that didn't mean that story and the sort of purpose behind the book didn't need to be out there. It just meant that for a company it wasn't worth it for them. So like you say, it means that people can support these projects being out there, which gives us even more stories and ideas, and it's a wonderful thing. I mean, this is why indie creativity, in whether it's writing or art, is just wonderful, because it gives the opportunity for everything.
I've just discovered Substack. I feel like a Philistine that I've just discovered Substack. And I'm like, where has this been? It's brilliant. But that's another example of, it was it boomed when all the journalists were like, oh, I'm going to write on this platform and leave the newspaper that treats me like crap, and I'm going to write on Substack. So I think it's a fantastic platform, and it's a fantastic outlet. Absolutely. Have you got Kickstarter at all in your new book, your how to self-publish book?
Oh yes, no, I mentioned it. Sorry, yeah, I was going to say no, I didn't use it. No, yeah, I talk about it, and I another thing that I think is great with Kickstarter is, as a marketing tool, because you have no choice but to market it once you've made that decision and you're going for it, because you have to raise that money. And so you have to be creative about your ideas for marketing, and you have to keep pushing it and putting yourself out of your comfort zone to contact people or whatever it might be. And so I think, firstly, it teaches you a lot about marketing because you have to sort of learn on the go. But also, I mean, the amount of eyes on your project during that month, that then, even if they don't back it, then when it comes out, all these people have seen it. They know that you're there. You know that idea exists. I think it's, yeah, it's more than just raising the money to fund the book.
I learned so much. Like, we probably need another YouTube video about what we learned in our Kickstarters.
That's it.
I think, right, I'm gonna go for 3. Okay, I learned the first thing, it pushes you, as you said, it just pushes you through that uncomfortable, I need to talk about my book for 21 days.
Yeah.
A long, like, I don't know how people do a 30-day Kickstarter, because I was done after 3 weeks.
How many I did? Oh no, I did 4 weeks.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And so it makes you, like you said, if you're uncomfortable, I'm an extrovert and I was really uncomfortable. So I don't know about other people who find that less natural. But it also is a really, easy, safe way of experimenting with stuff. So I did a competition, right? That was anybody who supported my Kickstarter, whether you gave £1 or whether you gave £500, you got entered into a ballot, and I would choose 3 people that get to have their kids or friends of kids of friends in the book.
Yeah.
Drawn in the book, right? And I thought, this is brilliant. This is like such a great thing. Your kid's going to be in a book. This is amazing, right? And I got my friend is, she was like, oh, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to help share this thing? She's got 250 followers on Instagram. This was before she went big on TikTok, which may have made a difference. I don't know. I don't know TikTok. But she's a mom blogger. She's, all of her target market is my target market. And she shared this competition, I think 3 times. And like the conversion rate was like 1 person. And I thought this was going to be such a big thing. Yeah. And it wasn't like, it didn't get more people, but I thought it was a lovely thing to do for people to support on a Kickstarter, because it's a way of giving back. Yeah. So one thing is, you get to try things, you get to try different things and see what works. The second thing, I learned a lot about human behavior and buying behavior. I remember every Sunday at 10 o'clock in the morning, I would do a big post, and I would do a story, because I got like 10 people support me every time. Because I think Sunday at 10 o'clock is kind of the ignore your kids and go on social media time. And so I found that out just from testing and learning, but also you kind of realize that you could try all these things, you could do all these posts at certain times, but actually at the end of the day, if it doesn't feel natural, if it's not authentic, it's not really going to work anyway. So that was kind of two of many things that I learned on there. And I think it gives you a lot of confidence to do something like that,
Yeah, I felt that I was just blown away by people's generosity as well. That I had no expectation for anyone to back it, and then I'd go onto my dashboard, and so, because I was refreshing it about 73,000 times a day.
I was doing that for you.
And then suddenly it'd go up and be, oh wow, and then you'd look and think, oh, so and so backed me, or sometimes somebody I don't know, or somebody I you know, I messaged on Instagram or Facebook, or I met somewhere and oh my goodness, they actually backed me. And it's so lovely, the warm feels from it as well.
I think it's those random ones, isn't it? Like my auntie's friend, just bought 10 books because she heard from my auntie's Facebook post, and she lives in America.
Yeah.
And like her friend lives in Wimbledon. And so she just kind of randomly bought these books. And I actually ended up hand delivering the books to her because I was like, oh, you're only in Wimbledon and I'm on my way over to see my friend. Can I drop the books to you? And she was like, I thought you lived in America. But and when I was chatting to her, I was like, why did you buy them? And she was just like, I've always wanted to do it myself.
Oh.
So it's nice to support someone who is actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brilliant. And well, I think we've both made it clear that we recommend.
I'm not sure if I'd do it again. Would you do it again? God.
I probably not. I mean, possibly if the project was right, and but it is such a lot of work. Yeah, never say never, but no time soon. So, from everything that you've learned, do you have any tips that you would give for other indies who are coming to this fresh? What would be your top tips?
Ask other indies, because we always want to share our knowledge. Join groups that you feel like you would, fit into. There are loads and loads of groups. There are loads of Facebook groups. Find one that, are your people, that think in a way that you think, that kind of are at a similar journey to you. And, that would be my first thing, is just find somebody that you can chat to throughout the process. Share more than you think, because it's all in your head, mate. So share it. Share with not just with family and friends, but like take the plunge and share some stuff on whatever platform, Twitter, Instagram, even LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'll start a YouTube channel and just share stuff on there, because if you don't tell people it's there, you've shared it, so at least you've done it, and you've got over that internal, oh, I've done that. And then when you're ready, you can share the link. And try new things, try different things, because that's the beauty of being an indie author. You don't have somebody telling you can't do it.
Definitely. And I think what you were saying about joining groups, there's a particular group that I'm in where it's very strong on kind of the marketing and the business side of things, which is something that I'm less knowledgeable about. And that's where I decided to make the switch to using bulk printing and using Kickstarter, because that's how a lot of the people in that group do things. And it made a lot of sense. And I don't think I'd have taken the plunge without seeing all these other people that were doing it and doing it successfully. And, even just to plant that idea, because to me, I think the thing is with adult books, and my first book was an adult book, print on demand works very well. But for children's books, it's less so, because of the need for the paperweights and the finishes and all of that kind of thing. So as you say, speaking to other indies and being part of groups and communities, you learn such a lot.
Yeah, and even if you're just kind of learning, sometimes just being, I kind of feel like sometimes I wish I'd found that group before, because I found groups on Facebook when I was, I think, in the middle of my Kickstarter. And it would have been so much easier, in a way, to sort of have known about it before. But I still managed to do it, right? So even if you're trying something that you have no idea about, YouTube is your friend.
Yeah.
Emma's YouTube site is your friend. And
I love YouTube. It's just
I,
the best.
I often watch your YouTube whilst I'm putting my makeup on.
Oh
It's
no.
like a really nice, it feels like when you're like putting your makeup on, going out, and you're chatting to somebody. It feels like you're in the room. So,
Ah.
um, yeah, and I think that when I say try different things, I am trying so many different things with this new book. Like I will tell you off camera what they are.
Well, I would
And
tell us a little bit. What can you share on camera? Tell us a bit more about your new book.
okay, so it's a different illustrator because I wanted to find a Scottish illustrator. And so I'll tell you a bit about the book. It's called My Family is So Scottish, and it's told through a girl who has, an uncle with a ginger beard that wears a kilt to work, a granny that's obsessed with rugby, a dad that loves reading poetry, a papa that's always taking them on long walks in the rain. They go to the Edinburgh Festival, they go to Locks, they go to the Highland Games. There's 50 Scottish references in this book. There's lots of Scottish words, so I'm having to add a glossary, and it's really joyful. It's really fun. I love the illustrations. There's some of them already on my Instagram page, and it's really a celebration of being Scottish. I grew up in England, so I'm almost like more attuned to the Scottishness of people than being in Scotland because that's normal.
Right.
So I kind of guess this is kind of an homage to my very Scottish family and how much I love how Scottish they are. And so it's a bit of fun. It's got lots of little, comedic moments in it. The way in which I'm publishing this is quite bold.
Okay.
So ideally, my plan is to get it fully funded by companies, sponsored by companies.
Okay.
And I have already secured 2 marketing deals
Wow.
with 2 Scottish companies. So when I say try new things, guys.
Yeah.
Because it does really, it excites you because you're doing something a bit different and it's different from the bit before, and you're learning. And so hopefully if it all pays off in June, it's going to be a really busy month. I'm kind of risking it all because
if anybody watching this has a Scottish company.
yes, yeah. Especially if it's like a medium-sized family-run Scottish company,
Yeah.
speak to me and I'll rewrite the book for you. I'm joking.
Oh, that's really interesting. And yeah, I love that. As you say, trying something new. How exciting. And obviously I will share when all your books coming out and everything, I'll be sharing that on my social media, but everyone needs to follow you as well. And where can everyone find you?
Instagram, I'm Kirstin_writes. Twitter, I'm Kirstin Author. And I think I'm that on Facebook as well. And you can also find me on LinkedIn and YouTube. My YouTube. I quite like YouTube because I think it's almost like it's for the kind of authors out there as well, and people who are kind of more interested in the detail.
Yeah.
And you can't really share that stuff on Instagram or Facebook. So I'm quite geeky in that way. I like the different things that you do on different medias. It is a bit overwhelming now and again, and I do per Facebook. It's like the poor cousin that you forget their birthday, isn't it? And they're like, oh, there's actually some interesting stuff on here.
Occasionally I'm like, oh, I'll do something that's just for Facebook, but usually, no, it's just shared from Instagram. Sorry, Facebook. Yeah. Mind you, they're the same company now, so yeah. It's okay. Before we finish off, I've realised there's a story that I would like you to tell that I kept meaning to say, tell that, and I didn't. So I think it's a really nice thing to finish on, is when you did your school visit at your son's school.
Oh, yeah. So just before I visited my son's school, I went to Barnes Children's Literature Festival, which, Emma, you need to go.
Yeah, I should that far. I should.
I volunteered at the festival on the Thursday, Friday, and the Saturday. And then I was featured in their free program, which is for independent authors, on the Sunday. And my son wasn't there because he was at his cousin's house. So it was kind of a work weekend for me. And I told him about every single time one of the authors came out or illustrators came out, a local child from the school in the Barnes area would introduce them, and they would have, you know, a proper script, and they would introduce the author. And I thought that was a really sweet thing. And it's a tradition that Barnes do. And so, unbeknownst to me, when I went to visit his school, he stood up in front of the whole of his year with this little, I've got it actually, I'll get it out, this little scrap piece of paper.
Oh.
And he read like, "This is my mummy." Shall I read it to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, wait. I've got it in this box. I hope I've got it in this box. And yeah, here it is. And I was like holding back the tears of pride.
You've got to go and be like the author instead of mummy.
This is, look at this. Can you see the little?
Oh, that's so sweet.
This is my mummy. She is also an author and is doing a series of books, no pressure, and has done her first book of the series. This is your chance to learn about it.
Oh, he's going to be, you know, the marketing guy. Like
he's my PR agent.
That's the right word. Yeah, I love that.
He was so involved in the Kickstarter that I think he was so proud. It's almost like he created the book as well, because he did, right? And yeah, I haven't read that in a while. It's so lovely.
Nice. And I mean, as well, I certainly feel for my kids that they get to see, you know, somebody working in a creative industry and somebody you know, pursuing their dreams, and you know, and it's lovely to see it through their eyes. I find little pictures of Lily the limpet around the house or notebooks and things, and when we go to the beach, they're like, "Oh, there's Lily." It's so, yeah, it's nice that they believe in you so much. It's really sweet. But yeah, I love that story when you shared that on Instagram. I was just like, oh, so lovely.
It's really sweet.
Well, thank you for being a lovely guest today, and we should do this again. This is so nice.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, so as I say, I will link everything below, but thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Emma.